Okay, so today we are going deep, really deep, into a historical debate. And might not seem like a total page turner at first, 8th century religious imagery. But just stick with me.
Oh, it gets good. It definitely gets good.
I promise. We're talking about the Libri Carolini,
Yeah.
which is basically, well, imagine
Throwing
Charlemagne.
some serious shade.
Yes, throwing shade, but like theological shade, at the Byzantine Empire and, their whole stance on using images in churches.
It's a classic East versus West showdown.
Right. So, okay, we're in 790 AD. Charlemagne commissions this massive text, and it's a direct response to a pro-image synod, a council, that was held in 787. Can you give us, like, the quick version of what led up to this?
Well, you got to remember, Charlemagne, he's not just some king hanging out. He wants to be the emperor, right, of this brand new Western Europe he's trying to create.
He's got ambition.
Big time. But the Byzantine emperors over in the East, they still think they're top dog in Christendom.
Ah, so there's tension.
A whole lot of tension. And that's where the Libri Carolini comes in. Is Charlemagne trying to flex, showing he's got religious authority too? And guess what? He's not afraid to disagree with those Byzantines.
So it's like my dad could totally beat up your dad, but with more, Latin and incense.
Exactly. It's a total power move. But here's where it gets super interesting. The Libri Carolini goes all in on using like the Bible to take down arguments for image veneration, almost like a lawyer presenting a case citing all this biblical precedent.
Oh, okay. So like what kind of arguments are we talking about here?
So there's this one part, right? And they're arguing that God, you shouldn't be looking for God in like visible things, but in your heart. And then to really drive the point home, they quote Psalm 27.8, I have hidden your words in my heart. Boom, mic drop.
They came to play.
Oh, yeah. They're not messing around. It's not just don't venerate images. It's the Bible is literally on our side.
Okay, smart move. Definitely a power move. It seems like they're really pushing this idea of like no idols, faith has to be internal. But I mean, didn't some early Christians use images? Like I swear I've seen paintings and stuff in those Roman catacombs.
You're right. You're right. There were images. But the Libri Carolini, it takes that head on. So, for example, some people said that Luke, the Apostle Luke, that he painted a picture of Mary.
Oh, right. I think I've heard that.
Yeah. But the Libri Carolini says, nope, not true. No historical evidence. They basically go through and pick apart any example the pro-image side gives, like, your history's messed up.
That's savage. I kind of love it. So it's not just no images, it's your argument is wrong. Okay, so they've got scripture, they've got history on their side. What else are they using to try to make their point?
Well, they get pretty sassy, too. Like, one example, they totally tear apart this idea that emperors are like apostles.
Ooh, I bet that's good. Tell me more.
So picture this. The Libri Carolini basically says, hello, apostles, they spread the gospel, right? Suffered for their faith, total spiritual giants. And then you can practically hear the sarcasm dripping. Emperors, not so much.
Burn. Okay, so that's amazing. So we've got scripture, history, and now a little bit of rhetorical zinger action happening.
Oh, there's more, there's more. They weren't just content with those arguments. The Libri Carolini digs into some deep, and I mean deep, ideas. We're talking logic and language.
Whoa, okay, so this is getting philosophical.
Totally. For example, there's this whole section where they break down the difference between adoration and, get this, kissing.
Kissing. Okay, now I am really intrigued. How does that even work?
So they're saying, okay, you might kiss like a holy relic as a sign of respect, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean you're worshiping it the same way you worship God. It's nuanced. They even bring in secular philosophy, linguistics, the whole shebang.
Wow. I never thought about it that way. To be honest, I'm a little surprised they were getting into that level of detail back in the 8th century.
It's pretty amazing. And this is what makes the Libri Carolini so interesting. These were big thinkers dealing with big ideas, and they weren't messing around. They used everything they had to make their point.
And speaking of bringing out the big guns, we were talking about how they dismantled those historical examples from the pro-image side. But didn't they go even further? Didn't they question whether some of those sources were even legit?
Oh, yeah, they did. They straight up suggested that some pro-image sources might be, like, totally made up.
Forgeries. This just keeps getting better. What kind of stuff are they questioning?
So, one example. There was this letter, right, supposedly written by a Saint Simeon, and of course it supports using images. But the Libri Carolini swoops in and points out all these contradictions with the Bible, essentially suggesting that someone totally fabricated the letter just to win the argument.
So we've got a historical mystery on our hands. I love it.
And the thing is, this whole awareness of language, like how to use rhetoric to your advantage. It pops up all over the Libri Carolini.
Mm.
It's like, it's not enough to just believe something. You got to know how to argue for it, how to be persuasive.
So they're playing 4D chess with this text, using theology, history, rhetoric, the whole bit.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about winning an argument, was it? This is about something way bigger. Power. Like, who gets to define what's right and wrong in Christianity? That's some high-stakes stuff.
Oh, yeah. In the 8th century, that's a pretty big deal.
Huge. And that's where Charlemagne comes in.
Right.
By creating the Libri Carolini, he's basically like, hold on. The Byzantine emperors don't have a monopoly on truth. We've got our own take on Scripture, our own understanding, and we're not afraid to say it.
It's kind of a mic drop moment, isn't it?
Totally. He's like, oh, you thought. Think again. And people noticed. Not just in the East, but all across the West. Charlemagne's power is growing. Not just politically, but religiously too.
So this text, it's not just about images anymore. It's about this major shift in power, right? Like a new center of religious authority is emerging in the West.
You got it. It's almost like a Declaration of Independence, but for the church.
Love that. It really makes you realize this whole thing, it's way bigger than we might have thought.
It absolutely is. And it's exactly why the Libri Carolini is so valuable to historians. It's like a peek into this whole world in the 8th century that's right on the edge of massive change.
It really blows your mind when you think about it, you know. Kingdoms changing, empires clashing, and in the middle of it all is this debate about images. Who knew?
Right. It shows you just how much power those images actually have. How something that seems so simple can become a battleground for these massive questions about faith and authority, even identity.
It makes you think about all the images we see every single day, right? And the messages they're sending. Like, who's in control of that? And what are they trying to make us think?
That's the question, isn't it? How are those images actually shaping our understanding of the world? It's a question that connects something from the 8th century to today in a way that's, well, it's both really interesting and also a bit unsettling when you stop and think about it.
It's almost like the Libri Carolini writers, they could see the future, our world where we're just surrounded by images all the time, all competing for our attention.
And just like they were wrestling with these complex ideas about images back then, we're having to do the same thing now. How do we navigate this world of visual information? How do we know what to believe?
That's a big one, right? How do you figure out what's true?
Exactly. And I think that's where the Libri Carolini, even though it's ancient history, might actually have something to teach us.
Okay, yeah, I'm really interested to hear more about that. It's kind of wild when you
Yeah.
think about it. It's like they left us this toolbox, right? But like a set of ancient critical thinking tools, and they're perfect for understanding the world we live in today, even with all the technology and everything.
Totally. That meticulous way they analyze sources in the Libri Carolini, how much they emphasize context and how aware they were of like the subtle ways that somebody can use an image to get you to think a certain way. It's amazing. These are skills we need now more than ever, don't you think?
Absolutely. So instead of just, I don't know, just absorbing whatever images we see, like we're sponges or something, we should be asking ourselves, okay, what's the message here? Who's the one sending this message and why? Like, what are they actually hoping to get out of this?
Exactly. Those are the questions we need to be asking, the same ones those scholars were asking back then. Like, images, they're never neutral. They've always got some kind of meaning behind them, and it's up to us to figure out what that meaning is. We have to think about the intention, you know, and then what could happen because of it. What's the impact?
So it's almost like we have to be a little skeptical of every image we see. Like, what's the agenda? You know?
Yes. And it's not about saying all images are bad. It's more like engage with them, but think critically. Think for yourself. That's what the Libri Carolini is pushing us to do. Be an active viewer. You're not just passively consuming this stuff. You're engaging with it.
So we've gone really deep into the Libri Carolini today, and I'm wondering, as we start to wrap things up, what's that one big takeaway you're hoping our listener will remember?
I think the biggest thing is we can't ignore the power of images. We just can't. Doesn't matter if it's a religious image from the 8th century or like a meme you see on social media. Those things, they have power. They can actually change what we believe, our values, how we see the world even. The Libri Carolini is a reminder to wake up and realize that power exists and to think critically about it. And then hopefully we use that power wisely, ethically, all of that.
It's true. I mean, this whole text, it's almost like this call to action, but it's hidden in this historical document. And it's something we really need to be talking about, even now, right? I mean, the power of images, misinformation, thinking for yourself, we're still having these same conversations.
It's incredible when you think about it. Like, these conversations have been going on for centuries, and if we learn from them, learn from what people were dealing with back then,
Right.
we become more informed. We can be smarter about what we're seeing and hearing, and in the end, I think it makes us feel more empowered, more in control. Wouldn't you say?
100%. So, to everyone listening, as you go about your day, scrolling on your phone, seeing images everywhere, just remember what we talked about with Libri Carolini. Question those images. Don't just take them at face value. What are they trying to tell you? And then think about, okay, what could happen because of this image? What's the impact going to be? We can't forget images have power and they can definitely shape the world around us.
Absolutely. They have the power to shape the world we live in.